Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is Failure in Personal Growth. And I want to start by asking you, the listener, to consider something just entirely counterintuitive.
Oh, we're definitely going off script today.
We really are. Because what if I told you that the people who succeed the fastest, the ones who reach the absolute highest levels of their careers, their relationships, personal goals, what if they are actually the ones who are failing the most frequently?
Right, which sounds completely backward to everything we're taught.
Totally backward.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the one lesson that has been ingrained in you since childhood. You listening right now, you know the scenario. You sit down in elementary school for a spelling test. You misspell a word, and the teacher just slashes a giant bleeding red X across your paper.
Yeah, or you fall off your bike in front of all the neighborhood kids, and your face just instantly burns with that hot rush of shame.
Yes. That exact feeling. From a very, very young age, we are taught that failure is the ultimate enemy. We're conditioned to believe it's this monster under the bed, whispering that you're not smart enough, you're not talented enough.
Just fundamentally not good enough.
Right. And the message is so clear. Run from it, hide it, avoid it at all costs.
It is a deeply entrenched psychological response. Society trains us, undeniably, to treat any stumble as this permanent, indelible stain on our character. We internalize that red X, not as a marker of a mistake, but, as a marker of our ultimate worth.
Absolutely. But today, the radical core mission of our deep dive is to prove to you that everything you've been taught about failure is undeniably backward.
100%.
We're going to show you that success isn't about avoiding the red X, but actively hunting for it. Because failure is not the opposite of success. It's the engine. It's the primary fuel of personal growth.
We're basically going to completely dismantle your understanding of what it means to fail. We'll look under the hood at the biological, evolutionary reasons why failing actually physically hurts your body.
Which is fascinating, by the way.
It really is. And then we are going to dissect 7 very specific real-world scenarios where things fall apart, from botched job interviews to hitting a massive wall while learning the English language.
And most importantly, we're going to give you a concrete, actionable playbook for turning your deepest, most agonizing embarrassments into your greatest evolutions.
Spot on.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because before we can talk about how to process failure, we kind of have to understand the landscape we're operating in, right? We throw the term personal growth around constantly.
Oh, it's on every self-help shelf at the bookstore.
Yeah, but what does it actually look like in practice?
Well, it's really helpful to break personal growth down into 5 main pillars because it's far too complex to just be one thing.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, you have emotional growth. This involves your capacity to identify your own feelings, regulate your nervous system when triggered, and develop profound empathy for people around you.
Right, emotional intelligence.
Definitely. Then, intellectual growth. This is the active expansion of your cognitive abilities, sharpening your critical thinking, or for so many of our listeners tuning in right now, rewiring your brain to learn a completely new language.
So literally expanding the mind's actual physical architecture.
Without a doubt. Third is social growth. So this evaluates how well you navigate human connection. Are you communicating your needs clearly? How do you resolve conflicts? Can you establish healthy boundaries without feeling intensely guilty?
Which is so hard to do.
It really is. Fourth is professional growth, which covers your career trajectory, your ability to lead others, technical competence, and finally, spiritual or philosophical growth.
So more about meaning and purpose.
Exactly. I mean, undeniably so. It's the pursuit of exploring your core values and understanding your place within the wider tapestry of humanity. But here is the most crucial, foundational thing to understand about these 5 pillars.
Lay it on us.
This is a lifelong, relentless journey. There is no finish line tape to cross.
Right? You don't just wake up one random Tuesday, stretch your arms and say, I have finally completed my emotional growth. I am done. Let's get breakfast.
Yeah, sadly, it doesn't work that way.
I genuinely love that you point that out, though, because people have this tendency to treat personal growth like a video game skill tree.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Right? Like you put in a certain number of hours, you earn enough experience points, you unlock the emotional regulation achievement, and you just climb this ladder in neat, predictable upward steps.
But that's a total illusion.
Yeah, isn't the reality actually more like a messy, tangled ball of yarn?
That is a spot-on analogy. It is incredibly messy. Real, substantive growth involves profound setbacks. It involves extended periods of utter confusion and feeling totally lost.
You just feel like you're going backward.
Absolutely. There will be moments across all 5 of those pillars where you feel unequivocally like you are moving in reverse. You might have a phenomenal month of emotional maturity, feeling totally zen, and then one day you're sleep deprived, you snap at a loved one over something trivial, and boom.
You feel like you've lost every ounce of your progress.
Yes. And that is where the F word comes into play.
Failure.
Failure. But to really understand it, we need to strip away all the theatrics and redefine it at its absolute simplest level.
Because we carry so much emotional baggage around this word.
We really do. But stripped of all the societal drama, failure just means this. Something didn't go the way you planned or hoped. That is it. A gap between expectation and reality.
Just a gap. Wow, that's so free when you say it like that.
It is freeing, but the problem is human beings instinctively fall into what we can call the identity trap.
Oh, this is such a dangerous psychological trap.
It is. We take an isolated, temporary event and we tragically fuse it to our permanent identity.
The permanent label. Like, if you fail a mathematics exam, you are not suddenly fundamentally a failure.
Right.
You're simply a person who didn't correctly answer a specific set of questions on one specific day under specific testing conditions. That's it.
Or if you're practicing your English, let's say you're ordering a coffee and you use the wrong verb tense. Or you totally blank on a vocabulary word.
Which happens to everyone.
All the time. But that does not make you a person who is bad at English. It makes you an active, courageous learner who is currently in the middle of practicing a complex cognitive skill.
The distinction between those two things is just vital. Failure is an event. It is something that happens in time. It is not an identity.
Strictly speaking, the absolute moment you take a temporary event and staple it to your permanent identity, you paralyze your ability to grow.
Because trying risks confirming this terrible label you've given yourself.
Exactly. I mean, yes, absolutely. You stop trying.
So why do we do it? Why is it so incredibly hard for us, for you listening to this right now in your car or at the gym, to separate the event of failing from our identity as a person?
Because since the day we were born, we've been fed 3 massive, pervasive cultural myths about success.
Society loves a clean, polished narrative.
It loves a montage. It loves a movie montage where the hero succeeds. We have been sold a complete bill of goods regarding how the world actually works.
Let's bust these myths wide open because they are actively holding our listeners back. Myth number 1, successful people don't fail.
This is a huge one.
We log on to social media, we see the gold medals, the best-selling books, the perfect curated Instagram feeds of people living their dream lives, and our brains trick us into thinking these people just coasted to the top on a magical cloud of natural talent.
It is the ultimate cognitive illusion. It's survivorship bias in pure action.
Right.
We only see the people who survived the struggle, and we only see them after they've won. We do not see the graveyard of mistakes they made to get there.
Let's look at some historical reality checks. J.K. Rowling.
Oh, perfect example.
Before the Harry Potter series became a multi-billion-dollar global phenomenon, she was rejected by 12 different publishing houses. 12 professionals looked at her work and said, no, this isn't good enough.
And she was really struggling at the time.
She was a single mother, struggling to survive on government assistance, and she literally referred to herself in interviews as the biggest failure I knew.
Or take Thomas Edison.
Right, the light bulb.
We think of the invention of the light bulb as this sudden, brilliant flash of genius. He found 10,000 different material combinations that did not work before he found the one filament that did.
10,000 ways it failed.
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey, an absolute media titan. She was fired from an early television reporting job because a male producer explicitly told her she was unfit for TV.
If we synthesize these stories and connect them to the bigger picture, we arrive at a really crucial realization. Success is simply the roof of a house.
Oh, I like this.
When you look at a beautiful mansion, you marvel at the roof, the windows, the architecture. What you do not see are the heavy, rough foundation bricks buried deep in the dirt.
Failures.
Every single one of those underground bricks is a failure, a rejection, a misstep, a moment of deep embarrassment. Success is entirely built on top of them.
That perfectly sets up myth number 2. Failure means you should give up. It's this idea that if you try something and fail, the universe is sending you a giant flashing neon sign telling you to stop, turn around, and walk away.
This myth is profoundly dangerous because it entirely ignores a critical vocabulary word that every listener needs to internalize right now, which is pivot.
Pivot.
Yes. There is a monumental, life-altering difference between quitting and pivoting.
Also,
Well, quitting means you stop entirely. You face a wall, you drop your tools, and you just abandon the journey. Pivoting, however, means you hit that wall, you extract the specific data and lessons from the impact, you change your angle of approach, and you forge a completely new path toward the exact same destination.
okay, I'm going to push back on you a bit here.
Go for it.
Because we hear never give up all the time in motivational speeches, right? But isn't giving up sometimes the smartest possible move? Let's be real. If you were pursuing a medical degree just because your parents wanted you to, and you fail your classes and you are utterly miserable, stopping is a good thing.
Oh, undoubtedly.
If a goal no longer aligns with your core values, or if the cost to your mental or physical health is just catastrophically high, quitting isn't weakness. It's a sign of thoughtful, mature reflection.
That is an incredibly important nuance, and I agree completely.
Quitting only becomes a toxic problem when it is a hasty emotional reaction to a single painful failure.
Yes. Quitting strategically after deep evaluation is wise. You are recalibrating your life. Quitting reactively, simply out of the temporary sting of embarrassment, is a tragic missed opportunity.
Right.
Which leads us naturally to the third great myth. Failure is always your fault.
Ouch. This one stings. Because as ambitious people, we love to take all the blame. We think, if it failed, I simply wasn't smart enough or didn't work hard enough.
We assume that blame because it provides us with a comforting illusion of control.
Oh, wow.
Think about it. If it is my fault, then I can fix it next time.
That makes so much sense.
But the harsh, realistic truth is that external, uncontrollable factors play a massive role in our trajectories. This is really about understanding your locus of control. Unprecedented economic crashes wipe out savings. Global pandemics shut down thriving, well-managed businesses overnight.
Just completely out of nowhere.
Exactly. Romantic partners change, experience their own traumas, and grow in fundamentally incompatible directions. You could be a stellar, top-performing employee and still face a sudden layoff simply because a private equity firm bought your company and is restructuring the debt.
So what does this actually mean for you, the listener? If the failure isn't always our fault, are we just off the hook? Do we just throw our hands up and say, well, the economy's bad, so I guess I'll just sit on the couch?
Not at all. Here is the vital insight regarding accountability. You are always undeniably responsible for how you respond to a failure.
The response is key.
That is entirely within your control. But maintaining a healthy, resilient psychology requires recognizing that you didn't necessarily cause the failure. You control the reaction, the pivot, and the next step. You do not always control the event itself.
Okay, so if failure is a completely normal part of the human experience, if it's not a permanent identity label, and if the most successful people in history are practically walking mountains of failure,
Right.
what is it actually doing for us mechanically?
Under the hood, you mean?
Yeah. Why is it so essential for our growth?
Failure is essential because it provides us with 5 hidden gifts. These are psychological assets that success, frankly, simply cannot offer. Gift number 1 is that failure explicitly exposes our blind spots.
Let's clarify this concept for the listeners. A blind spot, in a literal sense, is that area around your car on the highway that you absolutely cannot see in your rear view or side mirrors.
Right.
In the realm of personal growth, a blind spot is a weakness, a flaw in your thinking, or a gap in your skill set that you are entirely blissfully unaware of.
Yes, and failure acts as the harsh, brightly lit mirror that finally forces you to look at it.
Give me an example.
Okay, imagine you are preparing for a major presentation at your corporate job. You have rehearsed the material, you know the data, you feel incredibly confident. But the moment you stand up in the boardroom and 20 executives stare at you, you completely freeze.
Oh, no.
Your mind goes entirely blank. You lose your train of thought, you start sweating profusely, and the executives look totally confused by your scattered points. It is utterly agonizing in the present moment.
My heart rate is going up just picturing that room. The silence, the awkward shuffling of papers.
It's a nightmare. But look at the incredible map that this failure just handed you. It illuminated a massive blind spot. It demonstrated clearly that while you possess the intellectual knowledge, you have 0 tools to manage your autonomic nervous system when under social scrutiny. Or perhaps it revealed that your slide deck was far too complex and dense, proving you need to learn how to simplify high-level data.
Because if you had just managed to stumble through adequately and received polite golf clap applause, you never, ever would have known those critical weaknesses existed.
Spot on. You would have carried them right into the next, even bigger presentation.
That perfectly transitions us to gift number 2, building resilience. I absolutely love the analogy we found in the research for this.
The muscle analogy.
Yes. Think about the biological mechanism of physical muscle microdamage. When you go to the gym and lift a heavy dumbbell, you are not actually building muscle in that moment. You're doing the opposite.
You're tearing it down.
Well, absolutely, yes. You are literally causing tiny destructive tears in your muscle fibers. It's an act of physical damage. But that exact destruction is the biological trigger that forces the body's cellular repair process to rush in, synthesize new proteins, and rebuild the muscle significantly thicker and stronger than it was before.
And that mechanism is the absolute perfect representation of psychological resilience. Resilience is not a genetic trait. It is the acquired psychological capacity to recover from intense difficulties.
You can't just read about it.
No.
Yeah.
You cannot build resilience by sitting in a comfortable armchair reading a theoretical textbook about it. You only build it by surviving actual lived difficulty. Every single time you fail, experience that emotional tearing, and realize that you did not actually die from the embarrassment, your brain logs that as hard, undeniable evidence of your own emotional durability. You are laying down new neural pathways of strength.
Which brings us to gift 3. Failure teaches what success simply cannot.
Think about human behavior here. When you succeed at something, what is your immediate reaction?
You celebrate.
Yeah.
You high-five your colleagues, pop champagne, go out to a nice dinner, and just bask in the glow of the win.
Right. You almost never sit down at your desk with a yellow notepad and ask, why exactly did this work?
Never.
But failure. Failure demands a full autopsy. It forces you to sit in the quiet and ask the brutally hard questions.
Right.
What were my deeply held incorrect assumptions? What critical market data did I completely overlook? Who should I have asked for help but was too proud to approach?
It's the ultimate strict teacher. It forces you to do your homework. And that leads to gift 4, which is a bit more intimate and human, I think, developing true empathy and humility.
Yes, because uninterrupted success can breed a very dangerous, intoxicating arrogance.
Oh, absolutely.
It creates a false certainty that you possess a golden magic touch and that people who struggle are simply not trying hard enough. Experiencing a crushing failure strips that arrogance away instantly. It forcibly reminds you of your own profound human limitations.
And practically speaking, it makes you someone people actually want to be around.
Very true.
Think about the leaders or managers you respect most.
Yeah.
A leader who has failed, who has tasted defeat, and who openly and vulnerably admits it is someone I will follow through fire. Because we connect as human beings over our shared struggles and vulnerabilities, not over an intimidating facade of unbroken perfection.
Indeed. And the final gift, gift number 5. Failure is the ultimate forcing function for innovation and creativity.
How so?
Well, when your meticulously crafted Plan A crashes headfirst into a brick wall, you can no longer rely on conventional thinking. You are forced to look at the landscape from an entirely different vantage point.
Some of the greatest, most world-altering things in human history are the direct result of catastrophic mistakes.
Look at Alexander Fleming.
The penicillin discovery.
Yes, he was a bacteriologist who literally left his petri dishes out on a bench while he went on vacation. They got completely contaminated with mold. His entire experiment was ruined. A total failure of laboratory protocol.
A huge mistake. But instead of just throwing them away in anger, he looked closely at the ruined dishes and noticed the mold was destroying the bacteria. Boom, he discovered penicillin, saving hundreds of millions of lives.
Incredible.
Or the chemist at 3M. He was tasked with inventing a super strong, indestructible adhesive for the aerospace industry. He failed miserably. He created a ridiculously weak glue that wouldn't permanently stick to anything. It just peeled right off.
And that became the Post-it note.
Yes. That failure of a glue became the basis for a product that revolutionized office communication globally.
The overarching theme of these historical moments is that failure does not actually close the door and lock it. It simply reveals a different, entirely unexpected, and often vastly superior open window.
Okay, I am listening to you, and logically, intellectually, I agree with every point you're making. On a piece of paper, failure sounds like a magical, transformative gift.
I sense a but coming.
But I have to bring us back to reality. Here is my pushback. When I actually fail in real life, like when I hit reply all and send an email with a huge embarrassing typo to the entire executive team.
Oh, the worst feeling.
Or when I am trying to speak a new language and totally blank on a basic verb in front of a native speaker. My heart still physically races, my stomach drops into my shoes, my face gets hot, and I want to literally crawl under a table and disappear.
It's a very intense physical reaction.
It is. So if failure is such a beautiful intellectual gift, why does it physically feel like a life or death crisis?
That is the most important question we can ask because it bridges the gap between logic and emotion. The reason it feels like a crisis is because you are dealing with millions of years of evolutionary hardware inside your skull.
Okay, let's look under the hood again.
Understand this reaction, we need to look at the brain on failure, specifically focusing on a tiny almond-shaped cluster of neurons located deep in the temporal lobe called the amygdala. This structure is your brain's ancient threat detection center.
The caveman alarm system.
Spot on. In ancient ancestral times, for early humans living in hunter-gatherer tribes, your social standing, your reputation, and your visible competence were not just matters of ego or pride, they were literal matters of physical survival.
Because you needed the tribe.
Exactly. I mean, strictly speaking, yes. If you failed the tribe, if you couldn't hunt, if you couldn't contribute, if you were deemed incompetent, you faced social rejection. And in that era, rejection meant expulsion from the safety of the group. Being alone in the wilderness without the protection of the tribe meant starvation, predation, and literal death.
Wow. So when my credit card gets unexpectedly declined at the grocery store checkout line, or when I mess up a sentence structure in my English class, my brain isn't rationally analyzing this situation and saying, what a lovely learning opportunity.
Not at all.
My amygdala is hijacking my nervous system and screaming, saber-toothed tiger, we are exiled, we are going to die.
Absolutely. The mechanism is entirely autonomic. Your amygdala perceives the social threat of failure and instantly dumps massive amounts of adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream.
That explains the sweating.
Yes. Your blood vessels constrict, your face flushes to dissipate heat, your non-essential systems like digestion shut down, and your heart rate spikes to pump blood to your limbs so you can fight or run away. You are experiencing a profound biological survival response to a modern, completely non-lethal event.
This is such a massive aha moment for you listening right now. The next time you experience a setback and you feel that terrible, hot rush of shame and panic in your chest, you can actively separate the physical feeling from the actual reality of the situation.
I have to label it.
Right.
Yeah.
You can take a deep breath and say to your own nervous system, I hear the alarm, but I am not actually in physical danger. No one is chasing me. This is just my ancient biological hardware overreacting to a misplaced comma in an email.
And once you use that logic to calm the biological response, your prefrontal cortex comes back online and you can begin to shift your psychological response.
Which brings us to mindsets.
Yes. This brings us directly to a groundbreaking psychological framework by Carol Dweck regarding mindsets, which categorizes how humans interpret their own failures. Researchers identified two fundamental lenses through which people view their own baseline abilities.
Let's break these two mindsets down because they literally dictate everything. First is the fixed mindset. This is the deeply held belief that your intelligence, your creative talent, and your overall capabilities are statically set in stone the moment you are born.
Like you get a certain amount and that's it.
Right. You get the hand of cards you were dealt, and you can't change them.
People operating entirely within a fixed mindset are absolutely terrified of failure. Why? Because the underlying logic is brutal. If your talent is a static, unchangeable trait, then failing a math test doesn't just mean you didn't study enough. It proves permanently that you are inherently stupid.
Wow, that is a heavy burden to carry.
It is. These individuals actively avoid challenges. They despise exerting hard effort because their internal monologue says, if I were truly a natural talent, this would be effortless. Consequently, they feel intensely threatened by the success of their peers, viewing life as a zero-sum game.
But then you have the alternative, the antidote to that fear, the growth mindset. We hear this buzzword a lot, but let's be clear about what it actually means.
Please do.
The growth mindset is the belief that your basic abilities, your intelligence, and your talents are not fixed traits, but muscles that can be continuously cultivated and expanded through dedication, strategy, and hard work. Your starting brain and your starting talent are just the foundation. They are not the ceiling.
With a growth mindset, the entire paradigm shifts. Failure is no longer a devastating indictment of your character or your potential. It is stripped of its emotional weight and simply becomes data.
Just neutral data.
Right. It is neutral information telling you exactly what mechanical or strategic adjustments you need to make for your next attempt. People with this mindset actively embrace difficult challenges because they view struggle and effort as the mandatory, unavoidable path to eventual mastery.
I want to give the listener a highly practical, immediate exercise right now to practice this shift. It is known as the power of yet.
Oh, this is fantastic.
And it's so deceptively simple, but it fundamentally rewires your internal monologue. The next time you catch yourself having a classic fixed mindset thought, for example, you try to understand a complex English grammar rule and you think, I am just not good at understanding English.
A very common thought.
I want you to forcefully add the word yet to the absolute end of the sentence. I am not good at understanding English yet.
The linguistic shift is powerful. It changes the entire architecture of the thought. Saying, I am not good, locks you in a closed, dark room. Adding yet opens a door into a long, illuminated hallway. It explicitly implies a trajectory of continuous improvement.
So how do we transition from this high-level psychology to the actual dirt and grime of our daily lives? How do we take this growth mindset and apply it to the daily friction we all experience? You promised us an examination of 7 real-life case studies in failing better, and I want to dive deeply into those right now.
Let us do exactly that. We will rigorously examine the specific scenario, the deep emotional impact it causes, the hidden mechanical lesson beneath the surface, and the specific, actionable path to betterment for all 7.
Sounds like a plan.
Let us begin with scenario 1. The botched job interview.
Oh, the classic nightmare. The setup for this is universally brutal. You find a job posting you love, you prepare for 3 weeks, you iron your best shirt, you research the company's history, you practice in the mirror, and you feel fantastic.
You ready?
You sit down across from the hiring manager, and they ask you a complex technical question or a situational question, and you just stumble. Your brain freezes. You give this rambling, totally incoherent 5-minute answer that makes absolutely no sense. You walk out to your car knowing with absolute certainty that you completely blew the opportunity.
The emotional impact is tremendously heavy. You feel deeply inadequate, your professional confidence plummets, and you question your competence in your entire field.
But what's the lesson?
If we bypass the emotional sting, the hidden lesson here is highly critical. Intellectual knowledge is never enough on its own. You can possess perfect knowledge of your industry in the quiet comfort of your living room, but the ability to retrieve and articulate that knowledge under the intense pressure of social scrutiny is a completely separate, distinct skill that must be trained independently.
So what is the betterment path? How do we actually grow from this horrible car ride home?
You have to systemize your preparation to bypass the amygdala's panic response. When the amygdala floods your brain with cortisol, you lose access to your complex vocabulary and executive function. You need a pre-paved neural pathway.
Like a script.
Right. This is why you must master frameworks like the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. It gives your panic brain a highly structured, predictable track to run on when the adrenaline hits.
And practically, you must record yourself. Set up your smartphone camera, ask yourself a terrifying interview question, and watch the playback.
It is so hard to do that.
It is excruciatingly uncomfortable to watch yourself, but it is undeniably the fastest, most effective way to expose your conversational blind spots, your nervous tics, and your rambling tendencies.
That is an excellent framework. Let us move to scenario 2, which is vastly more intimate and often much more painful: the failed relationship.
The setup here. You invest 2 years of your life, your emotional energy, your vulnerability, and your daily routine into a partnership with someone. You plan a future. And then, through conflict or distance, it ends. It collapses.
The emotional impact here isn't just disappointment or a bruised ego. It's profound, debilitating grief. It is intense loneliness. And often it is accompanied by a toxic feeling that you completely wasted 2 years of your finite life.
I wasted my time.
That feeling of wasted time is the fixed mindset talking. If we look closely through a growth mindset lens, failed romantic relationships are essentially rigorous masterclasses in your own personal psychology.
Because it's not really about the arguments, is it?
No, the hidden lesson rarely revolves around the surface-level arguments. It often exposes your deep-seated attachment patterns. Do you lean anxious and demand constant reassurance, or do you lean avoidant and pull away when things get close? It exposes massive boundary issues. Where did you compromise your own core values simply to keep the peace? Where were you rigidly inflexible?
That makes a lot of sense.
Crucially, a collapsed relationship teaches you the stark, painful difference between loving someone and being compatible with someone. Love is an intense, beautiful emotion. Compatibility is a structural architecture of shared values and life directions. You can deeply love someone you are fundamentally incompatible with.
That is a remarkably heavy but vital distinction. The betterment path here requires taking a brutally honest, entirely unvarnished inventory of the relationship without sinking into the easy trap of blaming your ex-partner for everything.
Self-reflection is key.
What was your specific role in the dynamic? You must take the painful time to analyze your own behavioral patterns so you don't just unconsciously pack up those same toxic dynamics and repeat the exact same relationship with a totally different person next year.
Well said. Scenario 3 deals with a very common, very frustrating cycle of failure, the collapsed new habit.
The classic January 1st trap. The setup is entirely predictable. You wake up on New Year's Day and decide, driven by a burst of motivation, that you are going to become a completely new, optimized human being.
We've all been there.
You declare that you are going to wake up at 5:30 a.m., drink a gallon of lemon water, run 3 miles, meditate for 20 minutes, and read Stoic philosophy before work. You power through it using sheer enthusiasm for about 4 days, and by January 15th, you are back to sleeping until the last possible second and scrolling through social media in bed.
And the immediate devastating conclusion most people jump to is that they possess fundamentally weak character. They think they lack discipline, and they label themselves as lazy.
I push back on that narrative completely. It is absolutely not a failure of character. It's a terrible, fundamentally flawed, overly ambitious strategy.
Tell me more.
Psychological research shows us that willpower is a highly finite cognitive resource. It is exactly like the battery in your smartphone. Every time you force yourself to do something new and uncomfortable, you drain the battery. If you plug 5 massive, heavy new appliances into that battery on the exact same day, you will immediately blow the circuit. You run out of cognitive juice.
Without a doubt, the mechanism of failure here is ego depletion. The hidden lesson is that sustainable biological and behavioral change requires agonizingly small, incremental steps.
So what's the fix?
The path to betterment involves abandoning the new year, new me fantasy and utilizing a scientifically proven mechanism called habit stacking. Instead of trying to create a massive new routine out of thin air, which requires huge amounts of willpower, you identify an existing hardwired habit and you attach a tiny, microscopic new habit to it.
Give us an example.
For example, after I pour my morning cup of coffee, which I do every single day without thinking, I will sit and meditate for precisely 2 minutes. Not 20, 2.
You reduce the friction to 0, and you employ the crucial never miss twice rule.
Oh, I love that rule.
Right. Missing 1 day of your new habit because you were sick or exhausted is just being a normal human being. Missing 2 days in a row is the neurobiological beginning of a brand new bad habit. So you don't aim for perfection, you just aggressively focus on never missing twice.
That transitions us perfectly to scenario 4. The business or career project flop. Let's outline the setup. You are highly motivated. You pour 6 months of your personal savings, countless late nights, and intense emotional energy into launching a new business idea, an app, or a massive new initiative at your corporate job.
High stakes.
You finally launch it to the world expecting applause, and you get crickets. Absolute silence. No customers buy it. Nobody adopts the new software. Total lack of interest.
The emotional weight of this specific failure is massive because it is almost always public. Your friends, your family, your coworkers, they all knew you were working tirelessly on this. Now you have to face them and admit it failed, on top of dealing with the terrifying financial stress of lost savings.
The humiliation is real, but the hidden lesson buried in this failure is pure strategic gold. It forcibly teaches you the absolute necessity of conducting a rigorous post-mortem analysis.
At a hospital.
Yes. In the medical field, a post-mortem is when a pathologist carefully examines a body to find the exact mechanical cause of death so the hospital can learn from it. In business and personal growth, you must emotionally detach and examine the corpse of your failed project. Did you actually validate the market demand by talking to real customers, or did you just hide in your basement building a product that only you liked?
Ouch.
Did you solve a real problem, or did you build a solution looking for a problem?
The betterment path here is permanently changing your operational framework. You must study and adopt the lean startup methodology. The goal is to build the smallest, cheapest possible version of your idea, a prototype, and test it in the real world immediately. You gather harsh feedback fast, and you adapt quickly, rather than hiding in a comfortable theoretical cave for 6 months, building a massive product that nobody actually wants to pay for.
Scenario 5 is highly intimately relevant to our massive audience of student listeners, the major academic exam.
Yes, so many people struggle with this.
You are studying for the IELTS to immigrate, the TOEFL for university admission, or perhaps a grueling medical board exam. You sacrifice your weekends. You study tirelessly, reading your textbook for hours every night. You walk into the testing center feeling prepared, but the questions feel vastly different or significantly harder than you expected. The results come back, and you fail to get the score you need.
The emotional crush of an exam failure is huge because it feels so objective. A computer graded it, so you feel it is an objective measure of your worth. You feel like hundreds of hours of your life were completely wasted, and the darkest thoughts creep into you. You genuinely doubt your own baseline intelligence.
But that's the illusion.
Right. The hidden lesson here is almost never about intelligence. It is almost always a fundamental mismatch in cognitive strategy. You might be relying on passive learning methods like memorization and reading, when the actual test requires high-level critical thinking, application, and synthesis under severe time constraints.
The path to betterment here requires completely upgrading your cognitive tools. The science of learning is very clear on this. Passively rereading your notes or highlighting text with the yellow marker until the whole page glows is scientifically proven to be highly inefficient.
It just feels like you're learning.
Exactly. It creates an illusion of competence because the text looks familiar to your eyes, but your brain hasn't actually built the pathways to retrieve it. You must shift your strategy to active recall, physically closing the book, and forcing your brain to struggle to retrieve the information from scratch. And you must use spaced repetition, which systematically times your reviews to mathematically interrupt the brain's natural forgetting curve.
Next up, Scenario 6, the fading friendship. The setup here isn't a dramatic screaming argument or a terrible betrayal. It is much quieter. It's just the realization that you have slowly, imperceptibly drifted apart from someone you've known for a decade. Let's make sure we understand the mechanism of drifting apart. It means you stop calling as much, the text messages get shorter, the inside jokes fade, and you gradually lose that intimate connection as your daily lives take entirely different paths.
The emotional impact of a fading friendship is a very specific, quiet melancholy, a deep sense of guilt that you aren't trying hard enough. But the lesson involves a shift in how we view human connection. I want to move away from the cliche ideas of just putting in work and look at this through the lens of orbital mechanics.
Orbital mechanics, like planets.
Yes. Think of relationships like planets in a solar system. For a few years, maybe during university or your early career, the gravity of your shared environment perfectly aligns your orbits. You are close together, but as you age, the gravity of new jobs, marriages, or moving to new cities pulls you on different trajectories. It is physics.
That's a beautiful way to think about it.
Furthermore, it teaches us profound acceptance regarding the natural seasons of life. Some people are only meant to walk with you for a specific transformative chapter, and it is entirely okay and not a failure when that chapter naturally concludes.
I love that orbital mechanics analogy because it removes the heavy burden of fault. But if you realize an orbit is decaying and you want to save it, the betterment path requires aggressive intentionality. If you want to keep the connection, you can't rely on proximity anymore. You must schedule the effort.
You have to be proactive.
You learn to ask deeper, more meaningful questions rather than just texting, "How are you?" You schedule regular, intentional check-ins on your calendar, and you accept that in busy adulthood, having 3 deeply cultivated, rigorously maintained friendships is far more valuable than having 50 superficial acquaintances you just trade likes with on social media.
And finally, we arrive at Scenario 7. We deliberately saved this one specifically for you, the Learn English Lab audience, because it brings all of these psychological concepts into one sharp focus, the English language wall.
Oh, this is the ultimate daily scenario for our listeners. The setup is incredibly common. You are sitting at your desk, absolutely crushing it in your grammar textbook. You get 100% on the written quizzes. You understand all the rules of the present perfect continuous tense.
You're an expert on paper.
Right. But then you are out in the real world, maybe at a noisy coffee shop or at a business meeting, and a native speaker turns to you and asks a fast, unexpected question. Instantly, you completely freeze. You stumble over your words, meaning you trip over your pronunciation, you hesitate nervously, and you completely forget vocabulary words that you definitely know on paper.
The frustration associated with this specific failure is immense. You feel like an absolute fraud. You think, I have studied this for 3 years. Why can't I say a simple sentence? But the hidden lesson here is illuminating the massive neurological canyon between passive knowledge and active competence.
Tell us about that canyon.
Recognizing a vocabulary word written on a quiet page is a low-level, relatively easy cognitive task. Simultaneously retrieving that word from memory, conjugating the verb correctly, monitoring the social dynamics of the person's face, and physically manipulating your tongue and lips to pronounce it in real time under social pressure. That is an incredibly demanding, high-level cognitive task. It requires an entirely different set of neural pathways.
Exactly. Well, undoubtedly. Your betterment path here is to completely and permanently stop prioritizing grammatical perfection. You have to shift your metric of success entirely to communication. If you are at a cafe and you want oat milk instead of regular milk and you use the wrong preposition and mess up the verb tense, but the barista hands you a coffee with oat milk, that is a massively successful interaction. You communicated your need and the world responded. The grammar can be cleaned up later.
This specific scenario of freezing and making verbal mistakes bridges us beautifully into a much broader, highly encouraging point. The process of language learning is actually the ultimate, perfectly designed microcosm for practicing everything we are talking about today regarding failure.
It really truly is. It is the ultimate daily laboratory for resilience. Every single time you open your mouth to speak a new language, you are stepping into the arena of potential failure.
We need to state an unavoidable, scientifically backed truth unequivocally. Every single fluent speaker of a second language on the face of the earth has made thousands upon thousands of embarrassing mistakes.
Thousands.
There are zero exceptions to this rule. No one bypassed the awkward phase. Fluency is a road paved entirely with errors.
Let's look at the brain mechanics of language acquisition again. When you mispronounce a word, and the native speaker you are talking to scrunches up their forehead in confusion, your amygdala wants you to feel shame. But that social friction, that slightly awkward moment of not being understood, isn't a signal to stop.
No, it's a signal to learn.
It is actually the very mechanism your brain uses to cement the correct pronunciation into your long-term memory. It is the exact equivalent of the micro-damage to the muscle fiber we discussed earlier. The friction causes the brain to say, that pathway didn't work, let's wire a new one.
Let us illustrate this practically. Imagine an intermediate learner confidently says, I have many informations for you regarding the project.
Right, you make that mistake, and a native speaker or a teacher corrects you. Normally, the fixed mindset reaction is to cringe, turn bright red, apologize profusely, and stay silent for the rest of the meeting. But we want you to act out an entirely different response.
A growth response.
You use the growth mindset. You pause, smile, and say, oh, that is so interesting. I said informations with an S, but the correct form is just information because it is an uncountable noun in English. Good to know. You entirely replace the biological feeling of shame with the feeling of sheer academic curiosity.
So what are the practical daily tips for the language learners listening right now? First, you must force yourself to speak before you feel completely ready. If you wait in your bedroom studying textbooks until you feel perfectly competent and safe from making mistakes, you will be waiting your entire life.
Confidence follows action. It does not precede it.
Absolutely. Second, start keeping an error log. Carry a small notebook. When you make a mistake repeatedly, write it down. When you bring those unconscious errors into your conscious analytical awareness, they naturally start to disappear.
And third, deliberately and routinely seek out uncomfortable social situations. Join a local debate group, volunteer to make a phone call instead of sending an easy text message. Lean into the friction. And please remember, native speakers make horrifying grammatical mistakes all the time. We stumble, we use the completely wrong words, we lose our train of thought in the middle of a sentence, and we just keep talking. We don't judge ourselves for it, and we aren't judging you for it either.
So if we pull the camera back and look at the entire landscape, we have established a foundational truth. We are going to fail. We will inevitably fail in our language studies, in our entrepreneurial business ventures, in our intimate relationships, and on our academic exams.
It's guaranteed.
The most vital question of this entire deep dive now becomes, how do we systemize our recovery? How do we build a reliable, concrete framework to handle the failure when it hits?
We need a practical playbook. Theory is great, but we need tools. We're going to give you 6 highly actionable strategies to turn the pain of failure into literal, combustible fuel for your future growth. Strategy number 1, the failure journal.
This is an exceptionally powerful cognitive tool. When you face a significant setback, let's clarify that a setback is any specific problem, barrier, or mistake that delays or entirely reverses your forward progress. You do not just ruminate on it in your head.
Right, get it out of your head.
You open a dedicated physical journal. First, you write down the objective, dry facts of what actually happened, totally stripped of any emotional coloring. I answered question 4 incorrectly. Then you write down the raw, honest emotions you felt. I felt totally stupid and embarrassed. Next, you force your brain to extract the specific mechanical lesson. And finally, you write a concrete step-by-step action plan to spot the exact same pattern before it happens next time.
Okay, I love the logic of the failure journal, but let me offer some real-world pushback here. A few years ago, I tried to start a completely different podcast. I bought the expensive microphones, I recorded 10 full episodes, I spent hours editing them, and they were terrible. I listened back and I was so incredibly boring. I was devastated. I scrapped the whole project. In that moment of intense anger and disappointment, the absolute last thing I wanted to do was sit down with a cute little notebook, light a candle, and write a neat summary of my feelings.
That's entirely fair.
I wanted to throw my expensive microphone out the window. So how do we actually utilize this journal when we are blinded by frustration?
That is an incredibly authentic point, and it leads perfectly into strategy 2, the 24-hour rule. You couldn't journal in that moment because your amygdala was still flooding your system with stress hormones. You were in emotional triage.
Oh, right.
Modern self-help culture pushes this idea of toxic positivity. It demands that you fail and immediately, within seconds, slap a smile on your face and declare, what a magnificent learning opportunity. That is biologically unrealistic and psychologically harmful.
It just feels fake.
When you experience a failure like your scrapped podcast, you need to allow yourself to be a normal human being. Give yourself a strict 24-hour window to feel the raw anger, the profound sadness, or the bitter disappointment. Feel it deeply in your body without trying to prematurely intellectualize it or fix it.
Just let it burn.
Then, after a night of sleep, once the chemical emotional storm has naturally passed and your prefrontal cortex is back in charge, that is when you open the failure journal and shift into cold analytical mode.
That makes so much more sense. Fuel the fire, then study the ashes. Strategy 3 is about seeking feedback actively. We usually run away from feedback because our egos are terrified of criticism. We want to hide the failure. But I want to give the listener actual word-for-word scripts you can use tomorrow.
Please do.
If you fail a job interview, do not just disappear. Email the recruiter. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I am deeply committed to my professional growth and improving my skills. Could you possibly share any constructive, specific feedback regarding where my interview fell short?
The wording of that script is excellent because it disarms the recruiter by showing humility. If you are a student and you do poorly on a major university assignment, do not hide in the back of the lecture hall. Approach your professor during office hours and say, I am disappointed in my grade and I want to do much better next time. Can you help me pinpoint exactly where my study methods or my understanding of the material fell short?
Or, if your freelance business loses a major client, swallow your pride and ask them gently why they chose to go with a competitor. It is excruciatingly uncomfortable in the moment, but the data you receive from those conversations is invaluable. It is the exact map of your blind spots.
Strategy 4 is one of my absolute favorites because it's so incredibly subversive. It's called the failure resume.
I love this one.
This brilliant concept was popularized by Dr. Tina Seelig, a renowned professor at Stanford University. The exercise is literal. You open a word processor and create a document formatted exactly like your shiny professional career resume. But instead of listing your prestigious degrees, your promotions, and your glowing achievements, you meticulously list your biggest rejections, your worst public flops, and the most colossal, expensive mistakes you've ever made.
It sounds horrifying.
It does. And in the bullet points underneath each massive failure, you write the specific skill, resilience, or strategic lesson you gained directly from surviving it. Keeping this document physically normalizes failure. It puts your worst moments right next to your greatest successes, proving they are part of the same ecosystem.
It is a remarkable exercise in ego reduction. Strategy 5. Find your failure community. Psychological isolation breeds intense shame. When you fail in secret behind closed doors, your brain convinces you that you are the only completely flawed, incompetent person on Earth.
It's a very lonely feeling.
But when you actively join a mastermind group of other struggling entrepreneurs, or you participate in an online forum of frustrated language learners, or you engage in a messy, imperfect language exchange at a local cafe, you inevitably hear about everyone else's chaotic struggles. Hearing a highly successful person admit that they cried over a failed project drastically reduces your own feelings of isolation. Shared human struggle is the ultimate antidote to shame.
And finally, strategy 6, redefine success. We inadvertently set ourselves up for a lifetime of misery when we make our internal definition of success purely, rigidly outcome-based.
Give us an example of that.
If your definition is success means passing the IELTS exam with a perfect 8.0 score, you're placing your entire self-worth on external variables you cannot fully control. If you study for 6 months, improve dramatically, but get a 7.5 on test day, your outcome-based brain views you as a total abject failure.
We must intentionally shift our internal metrics from outcome-based success to effort-based success. The new, significantly healthier definition becomes: success means studying consistently for 3 solid months, actively utilizing spaced repetition instead of passive reading, and genuinely improving my baseline vocabulary.
Yes. If you execute those daily habits, you succeeded entirely in your process. You won the behavioral game, regardless of the arbitrary final number a computer spits out on a piece of paper. You control the effort. The outcome is just a byproduct.
To really bring all of this profound psychology home, I want to spend a little time looking at the actual lives of people who didn't just quietly survive their failures, but who built absolute world-changing empires directly on top of their failure resumes. Because when you see the magnitude of what they survived, your own mispronounced verb doesn't seem so terrifying.
History is incredibly rich with these vivid examples, and they serve as undeniable proof that greatness is not born from ease. It is forged entirely in the intense fires of repeated setback. Consider the early life of Walt Disney.
The ultimate imagination guy.
Spot on. Long before he became a household name, early in his career, he was unceremoniously fired from his job at a local newspaper. The stated reason for his termination: the managing editor looked him in the eye and told him he lacked imagination and had no good original ideas.
It is almost comical in hindsight. The man who conceptualized the entire universe of Mickey Mouse, who envisioned the immersive storytelling of Disneyland, was legally fired for lacking imagination.
It's wild.
Or look at the early trajectory of Albert Einstein. He is the ultimate universal symbol of powering human genius. Yet he did not speak a single cohesive word until he was 4 years old. He didn't learn to read properly until he was 7.
He was a very late bloomer.
His early teachers actively formally labeled him as mentally slow and entirely unpromising. He failed the entrance exam to the Swiss Federal Polytechnic School on his first attempt. The man who unlocked the secrets of the universe failed a standardized math and science test.
Then we have the incredible story of Stephen King, arguably one of the most prolific and successful fiction authors of our modern era. When he was a young, struggling writer living in a cramped, double-wide trailer, working at a laundromat to pay the bills, he wrote his very first novel, Carrie. He submitted it to publishers, and it was rejected 30 separate times.
30 times.
30 different publishing executives read his work and sent back cold, dismissive letters. He was so utterly defeated, so thoroughly crushed by the weight of constant rejection, that in a fit of despair, he threw the entire manuscript into the garbage can in his kitchen. He was entirely ready to quit writing forever.
But he didn't.
It was his wife, Tabitha, who noticed the crumpled papers. She physically reached into the trash, pulled the manuscript back out, smoothed the wrinkled pages on the kitchen table, read it, and fiercely urged him not to pivot away from his obvious talent. She forced him to send it out one more time.
That mental image of the manuscript sitting among the coffee grounds in the trash can, it gives me chills. What about the world of athletics? Look at Michael Jordan, the undisputed, globally recognized titan of basketball. As a teenager, he was actually cut from his high school varsity basketball team because the coach didn't think he was good enough or tall enough.
He was devastated.
He went home, locked himself in his room, and cried. But he has a famous, brilliant quote that perfectly summarizes every single psychological mechanism we've talked about today. He looked back at his legendary career and said that he had missed more than 9,000 shots in professional games. He had lost almost 300 games. And most importantly, 26 distinct times, his teammates trusted him to take the final game-winning shot as the clock expired, and he completely missed the hoop. He said, "I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is exactly why I succeed."
And perhaps the most profound, sobering example of pivoting after a truly devastating, life-threatening setback is the story of Malala Yousafzai. She did not just face a failed test or a missed basketball shot. She faced the ultimate terrifying obstacle. She was intentionally targeted and brutally shot in the head by the Taliban, simply for publicly advocating for the fundamental human right of young girls to receive an education in her valley.
It is the darkest, most terrifying, unimaginably painful setback a human being could possibly face. But she miraculously survived the surgery, and instead of retreating into entirely justified silence and hiding from the world out of fear, she took that horrific, traumatic event and pivoted.
She amplified her voice.
She used the global attention from the attack to speak with a volume and determination that literally shook the world. She continued her advocacy on a massive global stage, authored a best-selling book, spoke at the United Nations, and eventually became the youngest person in history to ever receive the Nobel Peace Prize.
When we examine the lives of all these icons, from Disney to Malala, we see a universal, undeniable pattern. For them, failure and success were not opposing, mutually exclusive forces. They were not enemies. They were lifelong, intimate partners engaged in a continuous dance. The failures provided the absolute necessary friction, the exact developmental resistance required for their eventual monumental triumphs.
So let's wrap this entire journey up. We've covered a truly massive amount of intellectual and emotional ground today. We've thoroughly deconstructed the toxic societal myths of perfection. We've looked closely at the ancient biology of the amygdala hijack. We've walked carefully through 7 highly relatable real-life scenarios, and we've handed you a concrete 6-step playbook for changing your life.
The overarching summary of our deep dive today is this. Personal growth is a staggeringly beautiful, incredibly messy, winding, and completely unpredictable path. It is absolutely not a straight, easy line up a ladder. Experiencing a failure, feeling that sharp sting of embarrassment, does not mean you are fundamentally broken, stupid, or incapable.
It means you're trying.
Failing is the ultimate, undeniable proof that you are actually trying. It is empirical evidence that you are bravely pushing beyond the cozy, safe borders of your comfort zone, and that you are daring to want something more from your brief time in this world.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, highly provocative thought. Something for you to really mull over today while you commute or while you cook dinner. Think back to the very last time you felt truly, deeply, overwhelmingly proud of yourself. I mean, that warm swelling in your chest, that undeniable pure pride. Was it after you completed a mundane task that came completely effortlessly to you? Did you feel proud after doing something you've done 1,000 times?
Probably not.
Or was it after you stumbled, fell flat on your face in the mud, felt humiliated, figured out exactly why you fell, slowly got back up, adjusted your strategy, and finally conquered the obstacle that previously defeated you? The deep, resonant truth of the human experience is that the actual pride isn't really found in the easy victory. The pride is entirely forged in the brutal mechanics of the recovery.
That is a wonderfully framed perspective. So your immediate call to action for today is very simple. The next time you face a stumble, whether you use the wrong word in English or you bomb a presentation at work, actively pause the rising panic in your chest. Take a deep physiological breath to calm your amygdala and ask yourself one simple analytical question. What specific mechanical lesson is this failure trying to teach me right now?
And please remember, if you struggle to understand any of the complex English vocabulary or the advanced psychological concepts we discussed today, do not label yourself a failure. It simply means you are actively challenging your brain's architecture. You are standing bravely in the arena, and you are growing.
Keep going.
If you found today's deep dive helpful, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Keep going, keep growing, and keep failing beautifully.